All right, well, thank you guys for joining us. We appreciate the largest crowd ever here in Tremont. And we also want to welcome you guys in Ontario, in Fargo, and in Nebraska, and in Fort Wayne. So thank you guys for joining us too. We appreciate that. So we are excited. We're going to talk about planter nutrient application. We're going to go a little bit farther than planter though. Justin's going to, at the end, he's going to talk to you about nutrient application that steps a little bit farther than the planter. So I'm Jason Stoller. Joining me is Justin McMenemy, and we are excited. We're excited to talk about it. Let's think about starter. When you think about starter fertilizer, what do you think about? What comes to your mind? I'm guessing that some of us are pretty skeptical. We've tried it before, maybe seen some advantage, maybe not seen anything at all. We spent a lot of dollars and we haven't seen the result. We are skeptical. I think there's some of us that we see the potential. Not necessarily committed to investing in the effort to put liquid in the planter, but we see the potential. And then I think there's also some of us that really have seen the opportunity. We're committed to it. We don't necessarily know that we're doing it right, but we believe in it and we've seen it. I think all of us, though, when we look at those charts from whether it's a starter fertilizer brochure or a liquid fungicide or insecticide, we get pretty frustrated at the unrealistic results that are promised sometimes. You know, I feel like if I were to add up every 15 bushel advantage from every sort of fertilizer out there, I think most of you guys would be retiring pretty early from farming, right? Letting your sons take over while you sit in Florida. That's not the case. We know that. And when we look at starter fertilizer, when I see those brochures, it makes me feel like this. It makes me feel like that it's snake oil. As we at Precision Planting have taken a hard look at starter and liquid fertilizer on your planter, we've done a lot of plot research. I can tell you it's not a single magic bullet. That's directly from the plots that I've been in, along with Corey, and you've heard some of his message earlier about some of the research. But there are dollars and there's bushels to be had by how we think about it, if we think about it as a systems approach. There's a quote that I really like. I think it fits here. Searching for the magic bullet is distracting. Adapting is a game of singles and not home runs. Just like every aspect of your farm, your nutrient program, starter is a piece of that. It's a single if you think about it and you integrate it as a systems approach. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's think about the first 6 weeks of that corn plant's life. Every day, that corn plant is making a decision. It's deciding how many kernels around am I going to hold on to. And it's deciding how many kernels long am I going to hold on to. And every day that plant can have a really great day early in its life, it's one more day that it's holding on to the max yield that it has capable of delivering. Hidden hunger is a term we use to describe early minor nutrient deficiencies. It's different from an extreme deficiency that you see when you're driving 55 mile an hour down the road to your field. It's a minor one. It's one that does show up in our plots and field research that we've done. It's one that shows up when you see a treatment right next to a check. Not necessarily in a big way early on, but there's a couple bushels there that show up at the end of the year. Even in a great organic matter soil like you're seeing here from my field actually near Eureka. Your soil is in contact with 1% of your corn plant roots. When you broadcast your fertilizer in the fall, you're spreading that fertilizer and you're incorporating it, doing a great job of keeping that soil healthy if that's what your objective. But it's doing a very poor job of actually feeding that plant and getting that phosphorus and that nitrogen into that plant right away or early in that first or second year. Very different than that, when we ban nutrients with the planter, what we're doing is we are feeding that plant like an IV. So we're taking those nutrients and we're able to feed it in a way where we're feeding not just the soil, but that plant directly. When we do that, we gain an efficiency from every pound of phosphorus and nitrogen that I'm doing. Ken Ferry will state 1.5x when you plant or ban your nutrients over a fall broadcast. That means if you're putting down 15 pounds of nitrogen and phosphorus on your planter, that's going to act like 23 or 24 pounds if you had broadcasted that. I've talked to a lot of guys about their nutrient programs as a part of my job at Precision and as a part of our plot research and sharing some of those research. And each of you guys farm a little bit differently for very good reasons. There's three, though, common themes that I see that fit those farms and those specifically those programs that I see that stand above the rest, especially when they're doing a spoon-feeding system approach. They do these three things in common. Number one, they buy for nutrient content, not just what somebody's selling them. That applies to starter. It applies to every fertilizer that you're investing in. Number two, they're reallocating their fall dry dollars. So they're not tacking on starter at the end and expecting to get those bushels. They're shifting those dollars from your previous passes through the field. And number three, they care about nutrient placement and they're getting it right. So we're going to step through each one of those. Let's talk about nutrient content. If you've got the choice between these two, which one are you going to choose? Vaughn might choose that steak, but it depends on who's paying, right? If I'm buying for protein content and I've got the choice and I care about how much I spend, I might want that steak, but I know the protein in my burger is going to be the same, and so I might make a different decision. That's how you need to think about starter fertilizer. We don't want to necessarily go to the price sheet and just select, hey, here's the lowest price per gallon. I don't know what's in it, but I'm going with it. But it also, absolutely, in today's margins, I'm not going to pick the $35 an acre 2-gallon product without knowing what's in it or if I really need it. So think about it. Be thoughtful about selecting your starter or your fertilizer for nutrient content and not just what you're being told or being promised. Second piece, integrate your starter into your fertility program. If you take that and tack it on at the end, again, it's hard to justify those bushels. I want to show you an example. Here's an example. Today, let's say you're fall broadcasting, you're putting down 200 pounds of DAP or MAP would be really similar in the fall. You're spending $48 an acre to get 92 pounds of phosphate and some nitrogen along with that. If you move to add 8 gallons of a product like 1034O, you want to deduct those pounds of P&N from your fall. Here's what that would look like, just a 1-for-1. That 8 gallons of 1034O, it's got 32 pounds of phosphate. That cost me $21 an acre. So to equal my 92 pounds before, I'm only putting on 60 pounds of phosphate or 130 pounds of DAP in the fall. That's $4 more expensive than if I were to have stuck with my previous broadcast program. Remember I mentioned, though, a 1.5 factor. Today's margins, today's crop prices, I want to take full advantage of the banding efficiency that I get when I put my nutrients down with the planter pass. So I want to take 1.5 times those pounds of P&N, and that's what I want to pull back on in the fall. In this case, today's fertilizer prices, when I do that, I actually save dollars. So if you talk to Doug Wiegand, you ask him, he said, starter is not more expensive, it's cheaper. It's cheaper when you integrate it, when you take a systems approach and you get the efficiency of banding and you take advantage of all that offers, right? Now you need to be above crop removal, we know that. We want to keep the soil healthy. But our goal is to take a systems approach to integrate it and not tack it on at the end. So you've been thoughtful about how you select your fertilizer, you've integrated it into your program. What does it mean to get placement right to make those gallons really matter? Think about what starter is. Starter is mostly phosphorus. So that means that where it needs to be is where the roots have access to it because phosphorus is an immobile nutrient. It doesn't move. As you think about a 2x2 location, where's that at between emergence and, say, V3 or V4? Here's your seedling roots. There are your crown roots. A 2x2 placement is actually nowhere near where those roots are at. Now, it's going to get to it later in the season, but during those earliest, coolest weeks of that plant's life, it's not necessarily accessible to the plant. 2x2 is great for high-rate planter nitrogen and high rates of sulfur. So if that's what you're doing, we're going to talk about Conceal, and Justin's going to share with you a product update related to that. But from a starter perspective, from a phosphorus and nitrogen's perspective early on, it's not for starter. And that's why we make that statement. That comes from plot research that we've done. 2 years ago in 2015, we did a study where we put a few gallons down in furrow, 3/4 inch away, and in a 2x2 placement. What we did is we put those few gallons down, we waited until V3, went it back out, and we cut those plants, and we weighed the plant biomass. That means the plant weight of those 10 plants together. What we're looking for is to recognize and see, can we see any difference in the plant growth that would show us that those nutrients are able to get to the plant, or maybe they're not by that stage in the plant's life. And what we saw was this. We saw at a 3/4 inch placement as well as in furrow that was very similar. Those nutrients were absolutely able to access that plant by V3. In a 2x2 location, there was less nutrients that were able to reach that plant, and we saw smaller plant sizes as a whole. It played out in yield too. 2015 was a really wet spring for us, and so there was a big difference in yield with the advantage of starter, but even placement as well showed that with a pretty big yield hit. Again, that was an early wet spring. That's where it showed up the most. But what does great placement really look like? What we want to do is we first want to feed your seedling roots right at emergence, so that's right there. And secondly, just as important though, we want to feed that plant with enough nutrients that that those first and second set of crown roots are able to carry that plant out to V3 and V4, V5. The way you do that practically is to multi-band. And when you multi-band, you split up that salt load, so you're able to do that safely with economical starters like a 1034-0. So think about that. There's a concept that we call the relay effect, and you've probably seen that before. It's not just precision planting. The relay effect is when you can place your fertilizer in a way where each stage in that plant, in that corn root's life, it's able to flawlessly transfer those nutrients. That's the objective. That's what we want when we think about starter placement and we think about getting it right. You know, all of our plot research, it drives technology development. That's what we do. We make product, we make technologies, and what has come from precision planting nutrient placement research is a product we call FurrowJet. Those of you guys that have attended, you've the last year or two, you've seen us talk about this product. I'm going to pass it around, our latest. For those of you that haven't, FurrowJet is a single attachment. I'm going to start this here. You guys can just pass it around. FurrowJet is a single attachment that incorporates that multi-band placement. What that attachment does is it replaces your standard quick attach Keaton seed firmer. It snaps in. It's got a small mini firmer as its first stage, and it's got wings that are cutting into the sidewalls as a second stage. So we have the ability to tri-band nutrients in that optimal 3/4 inch away near furrow placement as well as in furrow. There's flexibility in this product with 2 inputs, so you can tee it together if you choose, or if you want to run a micro in furrow package, you can do that separate from the wings if you choose. We've actually been for sale for 1 year now on a very limited basis. Some of you guys may have run FurrowJet, and we'll talk about that a little bit. So it's currently for sale now. It's fully available. We've made some design improvements since the first year in production, and you'll see some of those if you look carefully on the unit that we're passing around, or if you come to our website, you'll see that as well. You know, it's interesting. When you invent something new in product development, you know what you're going after. That's why you design it for what it's intended to accomplish. And with FurrowJet, that's what we did. We designed FurrowJet with wings that are cutting into the sidewall because we wanted to place those nutrients in that way from our plot research that was optimal. What's intriguing about invention is that you don't know what you didn't know until you make it, until it's there and you create that. And we saw that early on in our development that those wings are doing a great job of breaking up the sidewall. And so there could be opportunity there, you know, in challenging high clay content soils, maybe no-tillers. There could be opportunity to break that up. There's a grower Jerry Groth, Battle Creek, Iowa. I know, Jerry, you're attending, I think, in Nebraska. Thank you for participating. Jerry purchased FurrowJet for that exact reason. And so I want to let him tell his story in this short little video.
Yeah, I saw a FurrowJet introduced about a year ago, I believe, and where we aren't putting fertilizer on with the planter, but I like the concept of it slicing through the sidewall to place the fertilizer where the nodal roots would get it. And I had seen plenty of sidewall compaction in the past, and I thought that would be a good way to open up a channel for those roots to get through that sidewall compaction. I bought 8 FurrowJets, put on a 16-row planter, half with and half without, so we could run side by side for a whole season and test out this theory.
So S&S Equipment, Richard Mack, Casey, work with our regional manager, Ted Schmidt, and thank you guys for what you did to come back and work with Jerry at the end of the season. So these guys went out this past fall, they dug roots, they pulled ears, and Jerry did not have yield sense, and so they worked with him to get grain scale cart weights. Jerry was in a high clay content soil and knew, and that's why he was going with FurrowJet. This is one of his fields, and where he actually labeled his hybrid based on that half planter that was FurrowJet versus check. What he saw, 3 field average using grain scale carts was a 3 bushel advantage. So that's not a commitment for an every year situation, but physically what that wing is doing is it's breaking up that sidewall. So I think that's going to be a great compliment for you, those of you guys that struggle with high clay content soils. I think that's going to complement the opportunities that can be out there to take advantage of what FurrowJet can do, not just from a nutrient placement perspective. And FurrowJet is really flexible. That's one way that it is that we've learned, and we're learning from you guys that are running it. Those of you that have run FurrowJet this past year, you know, we've talked to you guys about your nutrient programs and how you're using it, and there are 5 different categories that I would put some examples in that we've seen guys use FurrowJet. So I want to step you through some of those, see if this makes any sense to you. Some of you guys have run FurrowJet splitting it 3 ways. The most common, so that means we're putting down maybe a 10 gallon or 8 gallons of a 1034O. This isn't coming up there, but basically something like that. Maybe you tank mix a gallon or 2 of a pop-up or throw some zinc in. Some of you guys ran where you wanted to take advantage of a single liquid and a single attachment to put a little bit of nitrogen down along with your a little more nitrogen down than your standard starter might offer. And so we've got guys that are running in a dual band configuration, something like 4 gallons of 1034, and they're spiking it with about 3 or 4 or 5 gallons of 28%. You got to be careful. Remember, your 28% that has 3 times the salt index of a 1034O. So we're not talking about high rate nitrogen, but if I want to put on 10 or 12 or 15 pounds of N, I can do that with a single attachment, but I need to know what my salt index is, and I need to be comfortable with that. But we've had some guys that have done that and done that really well, and we think that's going to fit a lot of guys' programs for those that kind of fit in the middle in terms of their rates. Some guys want to stick with a couple gallons in furrow, but they want to take advantage of the sidewall breaking opportunity that FurrowJet can offer. So maybe you move from your Keaton and you run with a FurrowJet, not intending to use those wings, but still running it in furrow. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity, and we've started to see that in a dual liquid configuration. Maybe you run a 1034O through the wings, and then you run a pop-up in furrow. Maybe you want to stick with all liquid on your planter and not add dry insecticide. There's going to be an opportunity to do some tank mixing and to split that fertilizer up, running 2 different liquids through that. Soybeans. You know, soybeans are a challenging crop if you're trying to drive up that yield capability. And sometimes we do things expecting to see results that soybeans don't act like. You know, starter is an interesting one that I think we're going to see more and more opportunities with. The soybean seed, very sensitive to salt. So in furrow, you're going to have to be really careful. But if we can put fertilizer very near furrow, soybean roots are a lot more compact than corn. If we can pull that very near furrow, maybe we can start to see a response. We've done a little bit of trials ourselves. We've seen some response. We've also been working with companies like FMC. They're interested in possibly offering the capability to offer a fungicide that maybe instead of seed treatment, more inexpensively, you guys can be putting down some fungicides that aren't safe in furrow, but by being able to surround that seed zone, we can actually do a great job of addressing, you know, problems like sudden death. Nebraska farmer Jimmy Frederick. I don't know if Jimmy's there with you guys in Nebraska. This is an article from December this year. Jimmy won the soybean yield record, 164 bushels. So I don't know what sort of things are going on in Nebraska, but I am excited to see what you guys are doing, especially Jimmy with what he's doing, 164 bushel. He comments, we learned later, he purchased FurrowJet this past year and comments that he's using a combination of fertility and biological products. He used FurrowJet this year and really saw that as one of the pieces in his puzzle to actually pull off being the yield winner of Nebraska this year. So I think we're going to see more opportunities based on the flexibility that this product we think can offer, this tool can offer to you guys as you try to push your return on investment and your bushels a little bit higher. So what have we seen here at Precision? Morton, Illinois, 10 miles straight north of here. This is a field where we had ideal conditions. This is not the field that Corey described earlier where there were low phosphorus and potassium levels. This is one where we have great conditions, great soil fertility levels. We had a great spring. We planted it in mid-May, and ideal conditions. We saw a very modest, about 4.9 bushel, and that was cranking it with 12 to 14 gallons of a poly starter. If I've tacked that starter on at the end, I'm going to be pretty unexcited about a few bushels. But if I've shifted most of those dollars from the fall, then I am absolutely going to take that single or that double this year. Jason Webster, 40 miles from here. You know, you guys in Indiana, Jason's halfway between here and Indiana. What you guys experienced with the rains that came through, we missed. And Jason was somewhere in the middle. And so what he saw on his farm this year was a little more advantage. He saw about a 12 bushel advantage. That was running 10 gallons of a poly. He threw some sulfur and some zinc in with it. We know that that starter is a growth accelerator, and so what he saw was about 1.3% drier corn, picking it probably at 25% moisture. So there's an opportunity there that we know comes with starter that showed up for him this year. 2016 Farm Journal, they did an independent third-party study. They included FurrowJet. We gave it to them along with their other attachments they were testing. You guys might remember 2016. That cold front that came through in Mother's Day was incredibly painful. They planted right before that. They didn't intend to. That was when they headed out in mid-May to do their starter trials. That came through, and what they saw was an incredible response. If I don't know the story, right, I start to think about, and I don't know that this is third party, I start to think of snake oil again. But the story was this: starter fertilizer is a great weatherproofer. That's not every year. We're not going to see 26 bushel every year. Absolutely not. But it's an insurance policy in a big way on those years. And if I shifted those dollars on other years, then I'm great with 2, 3, 4 bushel advantage. And I combine that. Let's see, what does it look like combined? I want to show 3 years of us testing FurrowJet and starter together, the combination. We had a mix of conditions across the years. We're seeing 10.3 bushel advantage was our average, running about 8 gallons of a poly starter. So that was $24. We reallocate the phosphorus and nitrogen portion of that starter, and our net profit over 3 years was $30 an acre. So this is a field. This is an organic matter SmartFirmer mapped field that actually I farm. It's near Eureka. So Irish Lane is the road that it's on, and that's why it's labeled as Irish. This is a highly productive soil. You look at the organic matters, we're up here past 4.85. We're about 5 on the high side, and on the low side, we're down at 3.6. So this is great soils. Think about the nitrogen and phosphorus as well supplying power of organic matter. All the data that I showed you was a flat rate starter application. I think it's crazy that we're putting our populations down, variable rating, we're putting nitrogen down, and we don't think about phosphorus and nitrogen on the starter in the same way. You know, I want to capture, and I want to see a world where we can combine that on that field. I want to take advantage of the weatherproofing that starter can offer on my high organic matter soils and be throwing down maybe 3 or 4 gallons. And then where I know that return for 15 gallons of starter is gonna dominate, I want to put it down. I want that flexibility to do that. But I also want good placement. I want to do that right. And I think as we've seen FurrowJet, we struggled to consolidate that because they're 2 separate products. And so I want to announce to you guys, this is actually a smart FurrowJet. So this combines the power of SmartFirmer with the right placement. What it is the same FurrowJet that you're available to buy today, but it's SmartFirmer ready with a mini SmartFirmer. So we're baiting this mini firmer, and that's going to fit right into the commercially available production FurrowJet. So as you think about the two, it's not one or the other. Think about your nutrient program. You're going to go out, and if you're interested in investing in this technology, buy FurrowJet, right? And it will be SmartFirmer ready with the mini firmer. We're baiting it this year. Hopefully we'll be selling it next year. That's our goal. I'm going to pass this around. I have 3 of these total. So that means that it better end up right here in the front by the end. So we'll be searching trucks here in Tremont before we're done. So Justin is going to come up. He's going to talk about placement. I've talked about placement from a root perspective. I've started to put the toe in the water on placement throughout the field and what that looks like and what it can look like. Justin's going to run with that, and we're going to talk about the planter pass and go a lot farther than that. So thank you.
All right, thank you. How are we doing today? I was reading an article the other day, and it said that in America, there are 100,000 decision makers in ag. In this breakout right here, between who's in the room and who's dialed in remote, we have 1% of America's decision makers in ag in this room right now. I'd like to think it's the top 1%, right? So anyway, sometimes I think too much. But as we have been learning more about nutrient programs, we've learned that it's not necessarily enough. It's not enough to just pencil out our nutrient program in the fall and then hopes that since the product made it out to the field, that the crop is going to intake it in the most efficient way. In fact, what we've learned is that you can have the right product on the right day in the tank, but it could be our pumps, our plumbing, and our attachment that ultimately decides whether or not our nutrient program is going to pay or not this year. I was thumbing through some pictures the other day, and I came across this picture. It's a picture of Koenig Farms in K-Pac, Michigan. And they run across about 800 acres of corn and beans. And this 2017 photo is the first year that they had liquid as part of their nutrient program. They had been an all-dry program before, and they just weren't pleased with how the product they were putting it down was coming up into the crop, how the uptake that they were getting. And so this year, 2017, they went with an in-furrow product and a 2x2 product. But if you talk to the Koenigs, they'll tell you that the story of 2017 doesn't start with this photograph right here. He said, the first day of planting, we're sitting there and we're loading up the planter, we're getting ready to go out, put the first acres in. He said, I don't remember why. Maybe it's because you've shown at Winter Conference the last couple of years, those fountains and pulsing and rotor over everybody. I don't remember why, but for some reason I got a wild-haired idea, and I took the hose and I put it in the tank, and I said, let's just see how we're doing. It's a brand new pump, brand new install. Everything still smells like it just came out of the box, but I just want to see how we're doing. So he says he takes out his cell phone, and he gets this video. So brand new install, brand new pumps, and he can see, he doesn't need a sensor. He can see with his own two eyes that he has row-to-row variability, and his electric pump is pulsing out to the crop. When we think about the purpose of the starter pass, the purpose of the starter pass is to give the crop a shot in the arm, to get it out of the gate. And we think about row-to-row variability and how that's going to affect each and every row that we're on. And we're putting phosphorus down. That product is not going to move. Where we put it is where it's going to stay. So if we're putting a high rate on one and a low rate on the other, it's going to stay there. And we think about the risks that we're putting in. So if we think about a 5 gallon an acre rate across 32,000 seeds an acre, we're asking our pumps and our plumbing to put a 1/2 mil for every seed. That's breakfast for every seed in the field. Now, when we look at these pictures, how are we feeling about our application right now? We penciled out 5 gallons of the acre, but that's not what we're going to see. This is what our crop's going to see this year. We're going to have some seeds at 9 gallons an acre, and we're going to have others at 1.5. Now, the product we may be putting in the furrow, what's the risk we run at 9 gallons an acre? Seed burn, right? And what's the risk that we run at 1 gallon an acre? A late emerger, a runt, a laggard through the year. So we're sitting here in the barnyard. It's time to go plant corn, and we find out that we have row-to-row variability, and we have pulsing from an electric pump. What do? Come on, guys, be honest with me. We plant corn, don't we? The neighbor's planting. The weather's perfect. The smell of the spring is in. We're going to plant corn. So that's what we do. The part I love about this picture is that for most of us, looking through the back glass of the tractor is the only way that we have to tell how well our nutrient program is going down, right? This is the only information we get on the day of planting. And if you're like me, what are your eyes drawn to in this photograph? The tanks. And if you're like me, you're going to say, well, the tank levels are the same, so I must be doing good, right? And I think I remember how many acres I had when I last filled, and it pencils out pretty evenly, so we must be good. Now, I had this picture in my presentation for an entire day before I realized there's a set of red balls on this planter. You guys see it? How well is he doing? We forgot the binoculars, right? We need the binoculars to be able to see how it's doing. And I was talking to Jason Koenig, and I said, well, Jason, you said you got in-furrow and you got 2x2, but I only see one set of red balls on that planter. He said, well, Justin, the other 2x2, we're putting 15 gallons of the acre down. I mean, you're not going to plug a row at 15 gallons an acre. That's a ton of product. So when we think about this pass right here, we're putting seed in the ground, we're putting our nutrients in the ground. If we make a mistake on this day right here, when do we find out about that mistake? V5. V5 is when we find out if we made a mistake. So if you guys take one thing away from Winter Conference 2018, I want you to take this next sentence away. You can plug a row at 15 gallons an acre. In fact, you can plug 2 rows at 15 gallons an acre. 1/4 of the acres on Koenig Farms missed an entire pass of the nutrient program. And we know that a bad day for your corn on V5 is a bad day for you in the combine, right? Those 2 rows set too few kernels around, and we lost 22 bushel to the acre on those 2 rows, 25% of the farm. On a farm average, we were down 5.5 bushel in 2017, or just over $19 to the acre, farm average. As precision planting started to think about liquid systems a couple years ago, we came into the topic the same way we start working on any system. We want to get our hands dirty. We want to buy the parts. We want to know the good, the bad, and the ugly of the things that are out there. We don't get excited to design a system just so we can slap our logo on something. We get excited to design a system when we know that you guys are going to be able to get more done in less time with more confidence and more information that ultimately leads to the bottom line for you guys. That's what we get excited about. If you guys are busting a knuckle and getting a bloody knuckle from putting a liquid system on, we want to have that exact same bloody knuckle. If you guys are calling Doltmeyer 3 times to make sure that you finally get the right fitting so that these two pieces will finally fit together, we want to make the exact same 3 phone calls, right? So as we continue this, what we did is start outfitting planters with liquid systems. You need to make sure that you get your flow meter. Don't forget the swath valves. You're going to need something to balance the flow. You need blockage monitoring. You're going to need a check valve so that you don't drain your system out. You're going to need an orifice. Make sure you pick the right one. And then you just buy a whole pile of hose, right? What we saw is that I end up with tons of boxes from tons of different people, but who's the architect of the system? You are. We are. There's not a lot of information in how I take those pretty pictures and I get them to all fit together to do exactly what I want it to do. And ultimately, I do get it put together. I do get it on the planner, and I have limited visibility. There may be a set of eyes on this system, but there's no voice. There's nothing that's going to tell me, stop, something's wrong. You're losing $19 an acre. Stop the planner. I don't have visibility. I don't have a voice that's going to tell me I have a problem. And I'm designed for one speed and one rate. Nothing else, right? If you want to change either one of those, you need to go back to the drawing board with some of these components and start to swap them out so that you can go to another speed and another rate. And so all in, I've spent between $350 and $450 a row, and I don't have visibility. I don't know when it's working. I don't know when it's not working. I had to design it from the ground up, and it won't tell me when it's not working, right? When we started to think about liquid systems, we said, man, liquid systems have got to be simple. They got to be simple to order, simple to install, simple to use, and simple to understand. They got to be flexible. I can't be locked into one speed and one rate. I'm trying to figure out how to maximize the return on investment for my nutrient program. I don't know the speed and rate that I'm going to use for the rest of my life. I need the ability to change both of those on the fly so that I can do trials, so that I can learn more and more. And visibility. I need eyes and I need a voice. It costs too much if I don't know that I don't have a problem. So out of that came 2 products, and 2 products make up the vApply HD system. The first one is FlowSense. It's a simple sensor that we can plug into any existing liquid system on the market. Any of the hardware that we have on our planner today, we can plug in a FlowSense, and we're going to get a row-by-row, second-by-second, foot-by-foot account of how our application is going. We're now going to have eyes and a voice. It's going to tell us when things are going okay, and it's going to tell us when we have a problem. So if we go back to Koenig Farms in 2017, this photo is taken when we're losing $19 an acre. When this photo is taken, we have 2 rows plugged. We were looking, and we couldn't see we had a problem. You can't fix a problem that you can't see, right? So if we think about putting FlowSense on this planner, we now have visibility. We're now going to get a foot-by-foot account of how our product is going down. And we're going to see the same problems we saw in the barnyard with the cell phone. We see that pulsing. We see that row-to-row variability, but it's time to plant corn. But we also see that there's 2 rows that aren't putting any product down. It's time to stop the planner and to fix that problem. When we think about this planner in 2017, FlowSense is a lot like our seed sensors. When everything's going well, what do? They give us confidence. But when things go wrong, they're going to pay for themselves very, very quickly, right? A set of FlowSense on this planter in 2017 would have paid for itself in 62 acres. It's all it would have taken to catch this problem and not lose $19.50 an acre. The next module that makes up part of the vApply HD system ends up being the brains and the brawn. If FlowSense is the eyes and the voice, vApply HD is the brains and the brawn. All of the features and all of the functions that are built into that hardware on the left, we've put it into one module. And we're going to use that same module whether we're putting 3 gallons an acre down or whether we're putting 60 gallons an acre down. And when we put a vApply HD module either on a row or in a section, that module is now going to start to take control. It's going to balance the flow, and it's going to control the flow for that section or that row. So if we're doing turns, or if we're swathing, or if we're variable rating, or if we're balancing the flow, the vApply HD is going to do all of that work for us. We don't have to piece pieces together. So what does it look like? What does it look like if I'm going to put this on a planter? If I put a FlowSense on every row, like we talked about, it's compatible with any liquid system that's out there. I'm now going to get an account for how I did. I'm assured that I put product on every acre there. Now, what I can see is I have 300% row-to-row variability down by the pond, but what I also learned is I'm variable rating. I didn't know that. So I can go to the coffee shop and I can tell the guys, hey, I'm variable rating. All I have to do is change the speed on the tractor and I change the rate, right? So if we want to start to take control, if we want to start to even that application out across the field, what we're going to do is we're going to come in and we're going to put a vApply HD module to control a section of rows now. So now that vApply HD module is going to balance out the rows as we go around the pond. It's going to swath on and off as we come into the headlands. And it's going to do, it's going to hold rate while we're changing speed across the field. So if we think about this system right here, we're now going to have a map of every foot. We're going to have eyes and a voice on every foot of our nutrient program. We're going to have a 15x flow window. I now can put in the headlands at 3.5 miles an hour, and I can outrun the rainstorm at 6.5 miles an hour. And I even have the ability to change my rate within that as well. I can do some learning. I can do a test strip in the field without having to change anything. And we're going to sit at about that same $400 to $450 a row set. So when we think about this system, we now have visibility, we have simplicity, and we have flexibility. And you guys don't need to be the architect of the system. All of the brains and brawn and eyes and voice are built into the system. Now, for some of us, we're starting to think about high-speed planting, or we're starting to think about getting farther and farther into variable rate. In that instance, we'll use those same vApply HD modules, but now we're going to come in and we're going to put a vApply HD module on every row, and now we can hit any rate at any speed that we would want to put down. And we're going to be able to do variable rate without a problem. Another benefit of putting vApply HD on every row is I now no longer need a check valve on the rows, and I no longer need an orifice on the row. All of that is going to be happening behind the scenes. So as we look at this, it's nice to show it on a PowerPoint, but it's more fun to look at it when it's in real life. So what we've got here is we've got this 1,000-gallon tank, and we've got it plumbed up the same way that you guys would have a planter plumb. We have a hydraulic-driven piston pump, and you guys can see it and you can hear it. We plumbed it over to a manifold, and then we run through a set of red balls here. Then we cut our lines to length and we put the same orifice on every row. So if we start running, we start planting. We're going to get it going here. So we can see this pressure sensor right here is very common that we're going to have on a piston pump, and we can see that there's pulsing on this pressure sensor right here. Now, if you're like me, you think, man, I got a pressure sensor here, I got some pulsing, but there's no way that that's going to be going out to the crop. There's no way with 60 foot of rubber hose that pulse is going to make it out to the crop. Anybody ever had a piece of equipment not go the way that you were hoping it would go? I'm probably the only one there. All right, there we are. So now we're planting corn. We look at this pressure sensor, and it's bouncing by 10 psi. Now we look at the other sensor that we have on the row, and I want to show you guys a little trick. You guys that are in the front here. If you ever don't like what your red balls are telling you, you just give them a smack, and they'll all come right in line, okay? So if you have row-to-row variability problem, all you do is hit that red ball, and it'll take care of it. Just as clean as day. So what's this set of red balls telling us here, guys, in the front row? It's saying go, right? We got them all pretty well lined up right here. Now, if we look at what the crop sees, the crop is seeing every one of those pulses from that piston as that piston hits. Every one of those pulses is going out to the crop. And we see that even though we cut our hose to the same length, and even though we put the exact same orifice in every row, we've got hidden hunger here on row 5. We're going to be at a lower rate here on row 5 all year long. And row 6, we're going to run the risk of seed burn. Now, if we put FlowSense on this system, and we get eyes and we get voice on this system, we're going to see those pulses. We see what the crop sees. So we see those same pulses, high, low, high, low, high, low. And we see that same row-to-row variability that the crop is seeing. Now, we know we're applying, so we don't have that issue. Now, if we want to take control of this system, we want to add control to this system. We're not going to change the plumbing here, but the first thing we do is we add an accumulator to the system. Now, any of you guys have ever done plumbing, an accumulator or a standpipe has been around for probably 80 years. This isn't new. It's not a new invention or anything. But what we do is we give it a pocket of air so that all of those pulses have a place to go. So we're no longer going to be handing those pulses, the water hammer, out to the row. They're all going to go right here. So again, we can either let the crop feel it, or we can just leave them in the accumulator. The next thing we can do is we're going to add a vApply HD to each row here, and now we're going to add some brains and some brawn to the system. So now we're going to be managing each foot, each row, to hit the rate that we penciled out in the fall. And as we come into swath here, each row is going to know when we've hit a place we've already applied, and we're going to swath off with each row. Then we come back around, coming out of the headlands, and we're going to come back on. So now what we have is the ability to make sure each seed is getting the same amount of product to it. Breakfast is the same for everyone. Lunch is the same for everyone. Thanks, Brent. I'm really excited also to show you guys this stand over here. For those of you guys that watched last year or went in the room last year, we had a planter on this side of the room over here. And on that side of the room, we had vApply HD on every row, and we talked about the value of vApply HD on every row of the planter, on the planter. And then we had this unreversed bar over here, and we had a different module on there, and we talked about the value of having vApply HD on our higher rate passes through the rest of the fertility program. And it was about 4 weeks after winter conference. I kid you not, it was 4 weeks later, Ben Schliff and Gino Plantamura came up to me and said, Justin, we've figured it out. We figured out how to get all the brains and all the brawn stuffed into one module so that now we only need one module for our entire nutrient program. So I introduced to you guys the vApply HD Flex module, and this is going to be the same module that we're going to use across our nutrient program. So we're going to start out with the vApply HD module installed on the planter here. And we're going to be running it through FurrowJet. And so we're going to be running 8 gallons an acre at, say, 5.5 miles an hour. Now we're going to finish the planter pass, and we're going to put the planter into the shed. And we're going to take this module, and we're going to move it to the side dress bar. Now when we come in and we side dress, we're maybe putting down 20, 30, 40 gallons of the acre. We may be variable rating. We may need the outer rows to run a half rate, or the outer rows to run a rate and a half. All of that is going to be done with the same module, the same technology that I used on the planter pass. So we get done with the side dress pass, and we put the side dress bar back in the weeds. And we're going to come back now and put on our foliar application. Now when we install vApply HD on a sprayer, we're going to control a number of nozzles here. Now we probably are going to be running flat rate on some of our foliar, but we're going to be changing speed a lot, right? We're going to be going 5 miles an hour into the headlands, maybe 15, 16, 17, 18 miles an hour across the middle of the field. And so we've got that flexibility built into the module here. So then we finish the sprayer pass, and for some of us, we're going to come back and we're going to put some late season nitrogen on here. So we're going to use this same module now, and we're going to install vApply HD Flex onto the sprayer with a drop attachment. And we're going to be putting maybe 15 to 20 gallons an acre, but now we're going to be really relying on the row-to-row variability accounting because we have a lot of plumbing here. There's a lot of plumbing going on, and we want to make sure that each and every row, each and every plant is getting the exact same amount of product. So as we think about this, and as we've talked about it, this is really kind of the first time since GPS that I can buy one piece of technology and it's going to improve each and every pass through my season. So this is available, and you guys can talk to your premier dealers about vApply HD Flex. One of the other topics that you guys are going to hear throughout the day is SmartFirmer, and just all of the things that we have learned about SmartFirmer over the last couple years. You guys have heard Dale talk about the insights in the furrow and how we can understand that seed bed and what's likely to happen in the next 24, 48, 72 hours. And you guys are going to hear Bryce this afternoon talk about how we have insights and we've learned about issues that pop up on row cleaners or pop up on gauge wheels. One of the other things we've learned with SmartFirmer, and we want to show off here, is the ability to do auto control with SmartFirmer. Now we know in our head that depending on the season, depending on the weather we get, we might get up to 20 pounds of nitrogen in mineralization in a given year for free. And we know that with organic matter, the higher organic matter, we got more horsepower in the soil. We may want to bump our populations up. We want to maybe aim for a higher yield goal on those acres. And we may want to change our genetics, change from a defensive to an offensive hybrid. And so with SmartFirmer, we can now automatically control vApply HD, vDrive, vSet Select, and MSet. Here's a field that's about 10 miles from here. We use it quite often in our research plots, and the reason we like it is there is an enormous amount of variability on this field. Now today, when we look at the nutrient program on this field and how it's been managed, typically what we're going to do is we're going to pick one yield goal for that field, and then we're going to pick a nutrient program based off of that yield. And we're not going to want to give up on our yield goal on the top side, on the north side of the field, so we're going to apply our nutrient program for the worst acreage on the field, and then we're going to be putting it down across all the acres. But if we think about the ability to take the knowledge that we have in organic matter and put it into practice and use SmartFirmer to do auto control, why wouldn't we come in and put 15 gallons the acre through FurrowJet on the light soil and then pull back to 5 gallons an acre when we get into the dark loam and the nutrients are there for us? We can leave the product in the tank, or better yet, we can leave the product at the co-op, right? And then what if we could come back 6 weeks later, and depending on the weather we've had, we put 40 gallons of the acre of 32 on the light soils, and we pull back to 10 gallons an acre on the heavier soils. So I want to show this off too. About 2 weeks ago, we sent Aaron Herman, our agronomist, we sent him to this field. It's 10 miles from here. And we said to him, we said, hey, just bring back 4 buckets of dirt. 1 bucket from each section that you see. And can we bring up the 2020? There we go. So what we did is when we talked to Corey Mulbauer, said, hey, you got this field, how should I manage this field? He said, if I was at a 2% OM, I would put 15 gallons to the acre. But as I get into that richer, darker, heavier soil, I'm going to have the nutrients available to me. I'm going to pull back and I'm going to go to 5 gallons an acre. So in the 2020, that's all we entered. Right here is everything we put in. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use SmartFirmer and we're going to go plant. So as we start out on the south end of the field in the really dark clay loam soil, we're going to pull way back. We've got the nutrients available to us in the soil. We don't need to add it to them. Now, as we work our way across the field, we're going to come across the middle of the field and we're going to start to compensate. We're going to start to increase our application so that we're going to be adding the nutrients to the field. Then we finish the pass in this blow sand, and I'm going to really put it to it. I'm going to hit 15 gallons an acre. Now I hit the inlands, I turn around and come back, and I'm going to start working my way back on the next pass. And we're going to be pulling back as we get into soil that's got the nutrients for us. We're going to pull back. There we go. All right. So this spring with SmartFirmer, we have the ability to variable rate off of vDrive MSET, we can do change a hybrid. VSET Select, we can change hybrid. And vApply HD, we can change the rate. And one thing we're going to be beta testing this year is that I run through the field on my planner with a SmartFirmer, and then 6 weeks later, with that same vApply HD Flex module, I'm going to variable rate off the data I collected on my planner. So we're going to be beta testing that this year. So my pass with SmartFirmer is going to give me the ability to variable rate the rest of my passes based on the conversation, based on the season, based off on what the crop looks like. So what's next, Justin? What are you guys working on? It seems like you haven't been up to much lately. Seems like you guys need to be working on some other things, right? One of the things that we're working on is a project that we talked about last year, and that's Project Conceal. And if you look at the picture on the screen, and if you get a chance to look at it on the show stand, you can see that it's been a busy year for Project Conceal. We have learned a lot of things this year across a lot of acres in a lot of counties of how a 2x2 system needs to be designed and how it needs to integrate into our existing equipment. We also learned that Doug Urbaniak is a monster with a Sawzall. If you need to cut a wheel in half and there's not one in the industry, how do you do it? With a Sawzall, right? So that's how we make prototype parts around here. So if you guys need to cut something in half, I'll get you Doug Urbaniak's number. We also learned that if you're going to ride on a row unit, you should in blow sand, you should probably wear a respirator. So I was 3 rows behind him. I didn't have one. I was T-shirting it up, and I had no voice for like a week and a half. So if Jeremy Hodel, take the lesson from him, wear the respirator. We ran a lot of acres, like I said, and we talked to growers and dealers and guys, and we said, what do you think? What do you think? What did you like about it? There's been a lot of 2x2 systems out for a long time. What is it about Conceal that gets you excited? And the first thing they said is minimal impact. When you think about putting a 2x2 system on your planter, it's a big system. It affects a lot of things. For some of us, we got to move our closing system back. It's going to affect our transport width. It may affect how we close as we come around curves. For some of us, we're just going to get our planter soaked with nitrogen, and we're going to have a rust game playing for the next couple of years. For others of us, we got rigid mounted ones, and it's only compatible with a few row cleaners, or it's only compatible with a few row units. And then consistent placement. As you guys know, as you move that attachment farther and farther back from the gauge wheels, you're not going to track as well with the furrow. As you come into curves or as you come into contours, we've actually seen situations where the coulter will walk over and hit the furrow that was just cut a half a second ago. And there can be big 20-foot sections where we're putting our nitrogen actually in the furrow if we're too far back on the row unit. And for guys that have some hills or have some bumps, you get a rigid mounted system, it's going to blow through the front end of that hill, and you're going to be putting product on top of the row unit for the next 5 or 10 feet behind that. And if any of you guys have run the systems that dribble it on top and hope to use the chain to incorporate it, and you've walked behind the planter, you've seen this picture before, right? Now, we don't have a canopy on the day of planting, so if we aren't putting an inhibitor in this product right here, we're going to lose a lot of it to volatilization. We penciled it out in the fall, we carried it across the field, and it's not going to make it to the crop. I asked this question, I've asked it to every breakout, and I've gotten the same answer in every breakout. And I'll even ask it to the 1,000 guys on the other end of that camera right there in North Dakota, Indiana, Nebraska, and Ontario. Which county is the most important county for a 2x2 system to be validated in? It's your county, right? Isn't that the answer? It's your county. Now, I knew that there was a Springfield in every state, but I didn't know that there's a your county in every state. And so our goal this year is to be testing in your counties. There's a your county in Nebraska. There's a your county in North Dakota. There's a your county in Indiana, and there's even a your county in Canada, guys. You maybe haven't been there, but I've been to Canada. I was there last summer, and there's a your county there as well. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing validation a lot this year. We're going to leave Conceal one more spring on the practice lap. It's not quite ready. We've made a lot of changes from last year to this year, but we want to make sure that it's ready for prime time. It's very important to us that we don't use your commercial acres and your folding money to validate our product. It's a very important aspect. So this year we're going to be running, and we're going to be running into the really light cover crops, the grass cover crops. We're going to be running into the residue, the corn-on-corn acres that are out there. We're going to run into the sticky residue. We're going to be running into the really tight clays. Make sure that we don't have any issues. And we're going to be running into the rocks. And we've learned a ton about rocks this year. There's gravel and there's Buicks, right? And there's everything in between. And sometimes from the road it looks like gravel, but it's a Buick, right? And even for you guys that are planting into angle iron, we're going to be validating that as well. Because we want to make sure that even in that install we don't have a problem. So what else is next? What are some of the other things that we're working on? Jason mentioned SmartFirmer FurrowJet. That's absolutely a project that we're excited to see. We're excited to see that come out. We're going to be beta testing it that year. Another one is a project called vApply Granular. There are a ton of acres in this world that there is not liquid as part of the nutrient program, and it's an all-dry program. And so we're going to be working to bring granular control or granular control into the 2020. And the last project is one that we're working on in research, and we call it vApply HD Flex Pulse. It's a whole mouthful, and I doubt that's what it'll be called when we get to the end of the game. But it's to say that 2 years ago, when we started vApply HD, we wanted to design a product that was the most flexible, most simple, best visibility, ultimately to drive return on investment for your nutrient program. At the same time, we've been working with FurrowJet, and we've seen that when you take product and you put it next to the seed, you put it near seed, you can actually get a better return on investment out of the same product sometimes when you put it next to the seed. And so our excitement is to start working on the agronomic research so that we can understand if we take the placement of FurrowJet and we combine it with the brains and the brawn of pulsing the product, is there a better return? I don't know the answer to that as I stand in front of you today. The engineer in me is super excited to work on this, but I'm not going to work on it unless it shows that it pays for you guys. That is the most important thing for us as we develop a product. But with that being said, what we have done, that vApply HD Flex module that's right there and is available, we have already built into that module the brains and the brawn so that should this system pencil out for you guys in the future, that module that we're getting today is already going to be capable to be part of that system. So as we finish where we started and we think about the 4 R's of our nutrient program, right place, right time, right rate, right product. Though we pencil it out in the fall, is this what every seed is seeing? Do we have some guys at 9 gallons an acre and other seeds at 1 gallon an acre? We know what a picket fence stand looks like, right? We all know what a picket fence stand looks like. But we don't have the visibility to know if our nutrient program looks more like this or like this. So my challenge to you guys is that we come into spring of 18 and we think about our nutrient program and maximizing the return on investment for our nutrient program. We want to think about what are the next steps for us to take. I think for most everybody, the next step is to consider putting a set of FlowSense on there, right? Like I said, it's there for confidence when things are working well. It'll pay for itself within the field if it highlights a problem that you otherwise didn't know you had. And from there, we now are starting to have enough information to decide, do we add some brains and brawn to the system, or is what we have work for our program? Are we with the right attachment? Are we getting the maximum nutrient value with the crop bringing it in?